to the big questions. I'm Nicky Campbell. Osama bin Laden may be dead, but his followers live on. On Friday, the Pakistan Taliban killed 80 people in revenge for his death. Now, Britain is a centre for the spread of Islamist ideology too, which poses not just a security risk, but also inflames tensions between our communities. So, our one big question this morning is, does Britain have a problem with Muslims? We're live from Birmingham at Edward VI School, Handsworth School, and we have a lively local audience. And on the panel for you this morning, an excellent panel we've got for you. From Quilliam, the counter-terrorism think tank, Majid Nawaz, the veteran foreign correspondent, Dame Anne Leslie, the leader of the Respect Party and Birmingham City Councillor, Salma Yaqub, and from the Muslim Educational Centre of Oxford, the Imam, Dr. Taj Hage. Now, as always, you can join in too, and please do via our message board. Just log on to bbc.co.uk/thebigquestions and follow the link. Now, earlier this year, Baroness Vazi, the Conservative chairman, warned that dividing Muslims between extremists and moderates has fueled intolerance. Well, Islamophobia, she said, has passed the dinner table test and become widely socially acceptable. Does Britain have a problem with Muslims? Dame Anne Leslie. Does Britain have a problem with Muslims?
I tell you what, television only ever does programs about problems. We are doing a program about Muslims in this country. There are endless programs about the problems between the white, either agnostic or Christian majority, and Muslims. So to that extent, yes, there is a problem. Now, there are only 3 to 4% Muslims in this country. There is a feeling among people who haven't looked at the figures that there are sort of 35% of the country is Muslim and causing trouble. This is because there is a difficulty between a settled community. Now, I'm not going into this business about, you know, that you go back, some people, 3 generations. I'm talking about people who are perceived to have a different culture. For example, do we ever have programs about problems with Buddhists? Do we have any programs about problems with Christians? No, it's always about Muslims, and that's partly because there is unease, and it's a legitimate unease.
A legitimate unease.
A legitimate unease. First of all, the white working class is, rightly or wrongly, feels that their little, not very privileged area has been taken over. Now, of course, I mean, look at Tower Hamlets, look at the East End. What has always happened with immigration in this country is that immigrants come in and they form ghettos. The Huguenots did, for example, mostly in the East End. Then you got the Jews, and that was mostly in the East End. Then you got the Asians, and that was partly because of different travel things. It was in the East End and also around Heathrow. Then as these societies become aspirational and become successful, they move out. The trouble is, those who are not aspirational or have their aspirations crushed or do not approve of the aspirations of the majority society, they stay stuck in the ghetto. You now have in Tower Hamlets a very nasty extremist, and I don't care what Baroness Vazi says because she's daft as a brush, but there is a difference between extremist, fundamentalist Islam and moderate Islam.
You've said something very interesting in the past about the problem that some young Muslim men have. What do you mean by that?
Well, I actually feel terribly sorry for young Muslim men in this country because their mothers treat them like princes. I mean, Muslim mothers are like Jewish mothers. You know, the son is everything, and they're spoiled, they're made to feel king of the household almost, or crown prince. Their religion teaches them that their religion is the most powerful and brilliant in the world, and it's a summation of all religions. Their imams tell them that they are fighters for Allah. Then they go out into the world and they find they're out in the world unemployment, local authority corruption, they've had lousy English education, and all of this, plus no sex, because they're not allowed to have sex unless they get married, and it's difficult to get married.
Salma Yaqub, do you want to come in?
I'm talking about, no, you see, you come from very non-extremist, non-ghettoized
Oh, thank you so
Muslims.
much. I actually was born in Bradford, brought up in Alum Rock in my younger years, and now live in Moseley in Birmingham. And many people could look at many of these places and come out with these crude stereotypes, which you just have, which are quite frankly insulting. I'm a mother of 3 boys,
Muslims,
and then my boys don't have the kind of life that you've just outlined.
because
Most
you are
Muslim
one of these
teenagers
Muslims, Baroness
are
Wansi,
more into hip-hop alongside with the other young mates.
Look.
And what is always missed out in these debates is actually what's working. Because it's so easy to go on about the fear factor. The fact is, survey after survey, because it's always about look at the evidence. If you're going to deal with the problem, let's be honest about the problem and what it actually is.
What is the problem?
And the surveys are showing, let me say what actually, because we need to build on what's working. That's the important thing, so that will be where the solution lies. In survey after survey, British Muslims have shown not only do they say they're more loyal than non-Muslims, they identify more with Britain. This stereotype that Muslims are isolated in these ghettos.
No, I made a distinction between the ones that move into a more of a mainstream society and those who are, by bad education and all the rest of it, stuck in ghettos.
Well, actually, in terms of ghettos, they just don't exist in the way that you are talking about.
There was a 2010 survey of social attitudes in this country, and it indicated that a quarter of people in the UK feel hostile towards Muslims, and a third feel cool, the word was new. I will come back to you, but Dr. Taj Hage, you've talked about culpability within Muslim communities for this. What do you mean?
I think Muslims to a large extent are shooting themselves in their foot. I think they want to have their cake and eat it. In other words, for example, we want to confuse and conflate culture with creed, religion with tradition.
You're talking about the way people dress as well, aren't you?
Absolutely. I mean, all of this is part of the whole sort of importation of 2 virulent types of Islam. Both of them are coming from the East. One is the Middle Eastern Arab variety, which are the Wahhabi, the Salafi, the Ikhwani, and one is the Indo-Pak variety, which is the Deobandi, the Jamaat-e-Islami and Tabligh Jamaat. So all of this type of ideology is showing, is being imported here and creating this them and us mentality.
You've talked of people dressing in pajamas and stuff. What do you mean by that?
I mean, we have pajamas with long unkempt beards and thinking this is the rigor, this is normal. Now, Islam, for example, is the biggest religion in a place called Indonesia. And how did it become so highly successful in Indonesia? Because it integrated, adapted, became naturalized to that society and became part and parcel of that community. Here in the West, especially in Britain, we are trying to bring and voice our cultural traditions onto this society. And Islam is very important. And one more point, what's very important, Islam has no culture. Muslims have culture. We need to distinguish between the two. For example, in other words, an Albanian Muslim, a Kenyan Muslim, a Zanzibari Muslim will have their own cultures. But Islam doesn't have a culture. Islam is a civilization. More importantly, it's a religion. And we as Muslims need to distinguish that. So that, in other words, I as a British Muslim, I'm integrated here, I'm become part of this society, though I'm not assimilated.
Yeah, you've also said if they don't like it, they should go back to, these are your words, to pajama land.
Yes, I mean, I also call it Sharia land.
If Nick Griffin said that.
Yeah, I'm entitled to say that because I know where they're coming from. I think this idea that somehow they've come here voluntarily. Why have Muslims come here? They've come here to work. They've come here, in my case, to study. They've come here for family reunions. They've come here for asylum seeking. And if they're voluntarily in this country, they need to adjust and adapt to this society instead of living in fairyland.
Fairyland.
I think if we take a step back.
You almost said fairy dairyland, which was an expression used by David Cameron in the Commons.
If we took a step back and saw how passionate Taj has got about that subject, I think we can probably begin to understand everything that's wrong with what he just said. I think you're emotionally involved in a subject. And
you're of course not.
No, I'm trying.
He's monetarily involved.
Oh, thank you.
I'm trying. So allow me just to make the point.
Salim here says you're monetarily involved. Yeah. Your organisation is accused by some Muslims say you represent no Muslims, and some Muslims say you get all your money from the American right and the British government and neocons and this, that and the other, and they say that you're a stooge.
Yeah, okay, so allow me now to make the point once we've got all the names out of the way. And the point I was going to make is that if we're going to talk about, there is a problem with extremism in the UK, but I don't think we should be worrying about how people dress, frankly. I don't think extremism isn't how someone dresses, because extremism is actually forcing your opinion on somebody else, whether it's by violence or by law, to enforce a dress code. It's not about how individuals choose to dress. And if we want to force people to dress in how we define, in a British way, like the French have done, I think that's just as extreme as those who want to force a woman to cover their hair. So I think that the French model of secularism, to say that a woman is not allowed to cover her face, or the Iranian version of Islam, to say that a woman must cover her hair, both of those are two sides to the same coin.
Some people, it's a visible difference.
And I would object to both. And I think that what Taj has just talked about, when he talks about pajamas, he talks about people growing their beards, there's absolutely nothing wrong with a person deciding to dress in this way or that, or a man deciding to shave or grow his beard, or a woman deciding to cover her hair or not. These are individual choices that we must respect.
Taj,
in
go to a folk music festival, you see a lot of beards there as well.
Absolutely.
But Anne Leslie, do you want to come back in?
I mean, seriously, that was a rant. That was a rant.
By Taj?
Yeah, that was a
No,
rant.
I'm afraid, Majid, I totally disagree with you. I mean, what we both of us to realize is that, listen, we Muslims came here voluntarily. Now, if we come here voluntarily, we need to adjust and adapt to this society.
You might have come here voluntarily. I was born in this country.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Your father came voluntarily. Your dad came voluntarily.
You don't know my father.
Yeah, your dad came voluntarily.
Hold on, you don't know my father. I was born in this country. Don't talk about my father, talk about me. I was born in this country. I can dress how I choose. I choose to dress in this suit, yeah? But at the end of the day, if any other person who's British can choose how they want to dress, then I have the same rights.
As Muslims, we shouldn't conflate Islam with culture.
I'm not talking about Islam, I'm talking about my liberal rights to dress how
I'm
I
going to
choose.
broaden it to the floor. So Dame Anne Leslie, Salma, I did promise you, but Dame Anne Leslie.
There's always rows about who finances what organisation. You are accused of being financed by American...
I can assure you I'm accused of many things.
Yes, I know. But then, of course, what I really object to is the heavy amount of financing of Wahhabi doctrine, which is the extreme form, from Saudi Arabia. Saudi spends its petrodollars on trying to spread Wahhabism, which was always a very small minority sect, born in the desert, the Arabian desert in the 18th century, to try and spread it around the world. Now, in fact, I've been on Salma on her program on the Islam channel, and it was a delightful and interesting and fine program. But I go onto the Islam channel for the question and answers,
well done,
and
Salma.
other channels.
Yeah.
These are all financed by Saudi by various means, and you listen to the question and answer things.
Yes.
Two young people ringing in who are confused, don't know what. And one young girl said, I just started to the mullah, or imam, or what do they call them. I had just started menstruating. She was very nervous about uttering this terrible word. I'm told I can't touch the Quran. And he said, no, you can't. I mean, he spoke for ages, but anyway, he said basically, you can't touch the Quran when you're menstruating unless you wear gloves. Another of these imams said, if you, a woman...
Are we talking about extremism or...
I know, but this is
what's the
how
relevance
many
of it?
people go into...
You know, we can talk about the Torah, we can talk about the Bible, we can talk about
I know,
what
but
people
they
find
are
offensive,
not,
what they're not.
they
But
are not where young people go constantly. I mean, there are only 300,000 Jews anyway in this country.
I'll come to you in just 1 second, because you've been classified as one of these Salafi, Wahhabi people, this particular strand.
But listen,
Salma, I did promise
you've allowed
to come back
two kind of really big rants, and so much is spewed out, and it's like kind of what...
Salma, have your own rant. Go on.
So at least let's get a sense of perspective here. Less than 3% of people in this country are Muslim.
Yes,
when it comes to loyalty, when it comes to tolerance, when it comes to democracy, all these British values, which I believe actually human values, are what British Muslims want, share, advocate with passion.
Right.
And all we hear about is the problem of people who apparently just want to segregate themselves off and are causing all this unease. There is unease in white working class areas, not because of Muslims, but because of genuine poverty, because they have been abandoned by the mainstream establishment. The BNP exploited that, racialised it. But the good news is this, and I would say Britain does not have a problem with Muslims. British politicians definitely try.
On the subject, if I may.